Welcome to Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm Director of Product Marketing for our cloud providers at VMware. And today I'm joined by Lucas and Girish. Welcome, guys. Thanks a lot for coming back onto Feature Fridays. Lucas, let's start with you first. Why don't you just introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do?
Great. Thank you, Guy. My name is Lucas Nguyen. I'm a Principal Solution Architect for Dell Solution Co-Creation Services team. My team focuses on building solutions with partners, cloud service provider partners, and communication service provider partners.
Thanks, Lucas. And Girish.
Yeah, hi, this is Girish Manmadkar. I'm part of VMware Cloud Foundation Cloud Provider Business Unit, focusing on Joint Innovation Lab initiative for the BU, focusing on innovating new solutions and responsible as the head of solutions for Joint Innovation Lab. And as a part of that, working with Dell on innovating new solutions to the market for VCPP route to the market.
Absolutely. And we're here today to talk about one of those new solutions. So Lucas, just give us a bit of history here. We've kind of seen quite an evolution in Cloud Foundation with Dell, vxRail, to like now Cloud Director with Cloud Foundation on vxRail, and now building on top of that again, we have Tanzu as a service on Dell vxRail with VMware Cloud Director and VMware Cloud Foundation. It's quite a mouthful.
Yes.
What's this evolution kind of, how's it been? Why has this journey gone in this direction? What's the kind of feedback you've had from cloud providers as you've gone through it?
Yeah, so our conversations with the cloud service provider is very clear. They want to have a single pane of glass, specifically using VMware Cloud Director to manage the heterogeneous environment underneath. And they really appreciate the abstraction of resources, compute, storage, networking, and so forth, from VMware virtualization all the way to the top. And so this VMware Cloud Foundation and VMware Cloud Director with the underlying hardware gives them that flexibility, a single pane of glass. It is easy to consume, easy to deploy for the customers. So customers' feedback to them is, they love it. And it allows the customers to focus on doing their apps instead of worrying about the infrastructure underneath.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great building block, right? To be able to scale that cloud out super quickly, add in vxRail nodes as you want, and then present those resources up to Cloud Director. And now deliver, Tanzu as a service through that single pane of glass onto the infrastructure, onto the resources the customer wants. So Girish, you've obviously been heavily involved in Cloud Foundation and moving forward with so many innovations on that. How's this journey been from kind of your side? What have you seen in terms of your conversations? And where's this gonna go? Is it gonna be extended even more as we bring in more solutions into the cloud provider portfolio?
Yeah, I think that's a really nice question. Absolutely. I think, we as both companies, as vendors for the customer or partner, is known as very good in infrastructure, softwares, and automation, right? So vxRail is bringing that. VCF is kind of tying into it as a co-engineered product. The VCD comes with its own CPLCM as another automation engine. So it's all about time to market. Nobody really wants to spend time and money and efforts on building this infrastructure level blocks, actually, right? It takes time. So this automation delivers them time to market, cuts down. And how do we make sure that my developers, my DevOps engineers are ready to rock the world with the application that they want to build? They don't want to wait on infrastructure or infrastructure admins. They want to give the power, empower this DevOps engineer to make sure that they are able to spin off their clusters, Kubernetes cluster at their fingertips very quickly, very easily. And also the automation allows them, that I will showcase it a little bit later, an application launch pad gives them some sort of, another way to accelerate the journey. So it's all about time to market. Don't worry about the infrastructure, as Lucas said. Just go get what you really need for your container-ready applications and deliver the business values as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you also mentioned two additional things there, right? Lifecycle manager and cloud provider lifecycle manager, which is semi-new. I say it's been in its 1.0 kind of form for a little while. It's now at 1.4. And that's delivering additional automation to deploy into like existing environments or greenfield environments, the rest of the cloud provider stack. So essentially what we're looking at here is Tanzu as a service. So as you said, Girish, right? This is all developer, addressing those new DevOps consumers. This is Cloud Director orchestrating and virtualizing all the resources underneath, which are all the vxRail instances. And then you've got the rest of the portfolio around Cloud Foundation. And you've got not only the hardware, perhaps through Apex, in an OpEx model or in a CapEx model, but then you've got the entire stack, Tanzu, Cloud Director, Cloud Foundation, available through points as well. So you've got a lot of flexibility in that consumption to make it easy to onboard. Lucas, I know you've got some slides that you want to kind of talk through. Let's perhaps get into some of the detail and take us through some of your slides.
Sure, let's do that. So first of all, thank you for this opportunity and greetings to whomever is listening, wherever time zone you are in. So as the title of this presentation implies, it's an opportunity for service providers to help their customers modernize really with a consistent infrastructure, consistency across the hardware, the infrastructure, to modernize the applications through joint validation. Dell Technologies and VMware have created this solution architecture that offers container as a service. So thereby leveraging the multi-tenant infrastructure as a service deployment to support container-based workloads across multiple clouds. Okay. So Tanzu is a service with VMware Cloud Director, multi-tenancy on vxRail and VCF. That is really what we have been validating. And the primary message to the service provider is that this is to provide a multi-tenant managed Kubernetes services. This is a managed services for tenant, DevSecOps, and developers on existing vSphere environments. So the key value is really, at the end of the day, as we discussed before, provide this consistency layer building blocks so that customers can focus on building, running, managing the application with a robust underlying platform, which enables them to focus on resources on application development and not on the infrastructure management. So how does this solution complement multi-cloud story? So whether looking through the lens of a cloud service provider to monetize multiple cloud services, or from a customer perspective, leveraging multi-cloud for global access, the Validate solution simplified the operations across multi-clouds to decrease complexity for a service provider who is building multi-cloud services and simplify that operation for their end customers. And this Validate design add the VMware Tanzu to VMware Cloud Foundation and vxRail component on this multi-cloud journey. So what we see here are the components that make up this multi-cloud environment. We recently launched a multi-cloud solution with Equinix a few months ago, and Equinix provides this direct private connections in Equinix highly secure and resilient hosting facilities. So starting from the left, we have our building block, right? Dell PowerEdge. That's the future-ready technology offering exceptional performance from small environments to hyperscale. And then we have Dell vxRail. That's our industry-leading HCI platform. And then furthermore, vxRail plus VMware Cloud Foundation achieve this greater flexibility. And we've just added this VMware Tanzu validation in that beige-looking hexagon there. And then finally, customer's choice of VMC on Dell Technologies and the new, you mentioned briefly, Apex Cloud Services via VMware Cloud to eliminate organizational complexities for cloud-like to extend public cloud benefits to workloads or in the data center or at the edge for consistency. And this is really fully integrated and functional at day one experience, right? So take a mental snapshot of this slide, because in the future slide on Matrix, you'll see the importance of containers and multi-cloud, which Dell is really well positioned to be on-prem or in the hybrid or connecting to hyperscalers with VMware Cloud. So, just beyond the technical validation, the level of partnership is so key because partnership dictates the health of the partnership, dictates sustainability of a specific solution in the industry. And this factor really guarantees the business continuity for any service providers that is consuming technology from various vendors. It's very complex. And the maturity and technology and the business partnership gains trust, right? Trust from a cloud service provider, a partner of Dell and VMware, is a trust we gain by a lot more customers of service providers. So today, that technology is an entity that's very well established and positioned partner with VMware using many different key performance indicators. Even with recent changes over a decade of business together, the benefit, is not going to change overnight, and that's a fact. And between the two companies, we have joint engineering commitment and product integrations and alignment. I'm talking about alignment across company organizations, from engineering to product alignment and vision to enablement of sales. So a key important is that Dell is committed to VMware Day Zero support. And for every major or minor release, Dell is validated and tested for day of product launch from VMware. So these were the metrics that I briefly mentioned. And here are some really excellent metrics to help frame the discussion with customers on containers and vxRail. These metrics connect back to that mental picture I show about connecting the different components to the multi-cloud. So first of all, according to the analyst view, analysts from IDC, from ESG, and data from VMware Research, 70% of container applications are or will be deployed in a combination of public cloud platforms and private data center. So this really fits in our multi-cloud journey, right? Slide previously, right? And so to this multi-cloud journey, 64% of cloud buyers believe it is important to have a shared cross-cloud management control plane. And then another important metric to note here is last year, there was already at least 61% of Kubernetes in production. So, the bottom row here, really, it shows our excellent vxRail traction in the industry, in the market, and the combination of this vxRail and Tanzu is really our catalyst for capturing more deployments in a multi-cloud world. So first of all, from a operator experience perspective, we want to offer a consistent infrastructure, which is achieved by Dell and VMware integrations. This awesome partnership that I mentioned. And then this illustrated with our recent joint launch of VMware Cloud Project in partnership with VMware and Equinix. So the diagram here is simple to show in the middle the infrastructure as a service. That's a consistent with VMware Cloud at the customer data center or at colo and into the hyperscalers with VMware Cloud. So this consistency is really to simplify cloud-native DevOps practices, giving a very simple path to Kubernetes production. So the end result is to drive operator efficiency. And this operational consistency and efficiency at the infrastructure layer really provides a better developer experience at the end of the day. So developers can be more productive when they know the stability in the infrastructure that translates to better predictability and better outcome-based app development. And really, application modernization can happen in a predictive, only in a predictive schedule, right? We're talking about in weeks and not in months. It's very simple. So I'll cover this slide. So the solution, like I said, it's very simple. The components are vxRail and VMware Cloud Foundation, VMware Tanzu, and then VMware Cloud Director through the normal VMware Partner Program. Okay, so with the next slide, I want to invite Girish to give us a deeper dive on this architecture. Girish?
Yeah, so thank you, Lucas, for outlining the business need, the overall solution, and why it is, what's important, and why customers and providers should look at it. It's all about consumption. So let us go do a little bit deep dive on what solution or reference architecture that we have built together. From a high-level architecture perspective, if you look at on the left-hand side of my screen, it's a developer looking for resources, looking for an environment to ship the product, right, as quickly as possible. And the IT developer is looking at, oh, how many resources do I have? What kind of policies I need to define? What resources are available? Doing all sort of capacity management and making sure that the lights are on always for the developer. So, right. So these are the two personas that we always see. At least IT operator, we have been seeing it from last many years. Now developer is coming into the picture as well to look for various aspects like maybe a Tanzu runtime services, maybe hybrid infrastructure services that you want to consume through the applications to deliver the business outcomes. So let us look at a little bit more detail. There are two ways to really deliver this architecture. There's a single tenant architecture, which means that if you look at the screen, you have a VMware Cloud Foundation with Dell vxRail and Cloud Director kind of consuming various workloads. So I have an IT operator responsible for managing my management clusters and then making sure that the workload clusters or domains are available for my developers to consume and deliver various sort of Tanzu specific services, maybe, delivering and creating various applications based off of container, right? For that, the blue things that you will consider that those are my management components. My IT operator is taking care of it. Maybe it's an edge cluster, maybe it's defining a new workload domain cluster, maybe giving some more compute resources required for the developer as needed to meet the capacity demands. And the things which are in the green are basically a developer's spin-off objects in terms of Tanzu Kubernetes worker nodes or worker clusters to ensure that various vSphere PAR services or maybe various Tanzu services are being delivered for the application to ensure that the application is managed, maintained, lifecycle through developer's interface very quickly, maybe using kubectl or maybe using some different other services that we'll talk about it in future as well. So it's all about making sure that one customer, one org, single tenant is dedicated private cloud kind of experience for a developer, for a customer, shipping various products or various applications at ease.
Girish, just a quick question on this. So you've got their cloud foundation as the core infrastructure with Cloud Director, which would, in fact, there could be multiple ways this could be done, right? This could be a tenant dedicated hardware environment where they have their own vxRails and everything else specified to them, and the workload domain would be theirs. But you could still have Cloud Director along the top as the entry vehicle into that single tenant, physically isolated environment.
Absolutely. I think I will show you in the demo exactly how the developer will have a look and feel of the environment. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you are absolutely right. It's all about having that tenant level entry point for a developer, not to worry about what is underlying infrastructure, how it is sliced and diced. Though it is single tenant, everything is dedicated, but still developer did not have to look around into a vCenter server or what is and where it's coming from. You will just have a look from a Cloud Director tenant perspective. What is the resources available and how am I consuming it? That's about it.
Yeah, so it's really nice in that model then for a cloud provider. So you could, if you wanted, if you've got a big enough customer, deploy a whole instance of Cloud Director, VCF and everything for them. But if you're like 99% of cloud providers delivering a lot of multi-tenanted infrastructure, and occasionally you're going to ask, the customers are going to ask for their own physical hardware for performance reasons or whatever. In that scenario, a cloud provider doesn't have to start replicating stuff. They've still got their single supportable entry point. And that entry point then would apply for developers, operators, tenants of all sorts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
a nice model.
Yeah. So let us do a double click on how this single architecture is being built in terms of the number of steps, right? So these are the high level steps that any IT admin or cloud admin will perform in terms of, making sure the cloud foundation is up and running, ensure that, they have access to vCenter server, ESXi. And once everything is up, an IT operator capable of understanding and how to deploy supervisory control plane or cluster, create various vSphere namespaces, create the content library, requirement for Tanzu to run Harbor registry and things like that, right? So all these steps are easy to follow, essentially driven by automation coming out of vxRail and VCF at the infrastructure level. And also, the Tanzu Kubernetes is a part of the VMware kernel. And that becomes really easy that VMware Cloud Foundation, in line with VCD integration, will be able to deliver very, very easily a seamless experience for not only IT operator or a cloud admin, but also for the developer, right? So once you are done with those integration steps, voila, it's there for developers to start consuming it. When you say integrating with VCD, right? Again, a few steps, very well documented, very well followed in terms of deploying Cloud Director, as Guy said, using cloud provider lifecycle automation, whether it's a greenfield or brownfield. We have that capability to really deploy the Cloud Director and few other components of cloud provider stack as well. We were able to really deploy Cloud Director really quickly using the power of lifecycle automation delivered by CPLCM, Cloud Provider Lifecycle Automation Engine. Once after doing that, essentially, perform these steps, pretty much normal, ensure that vCenter server and 60 define various network pools as my endpoints. Once I'm done that, configuring various aspects of me as a provider in a VCD. So the Tanzu supervisor cluster was deployed. Now I'm consuming it as a provider. So all the infrastructure level resources, including the Tanzu supervisor cluster, are at my disposal as a provider, as a cloud admin. And then I need to make sure that as per my organization, what are the various policies, what type of developers that I have, what kind of resources that they need, CPU, memory, and a storage type, and then publish those various policies and ensure that enable the UI plugin so that when the developer is logging in through a tenant portal, gets one drop-down list to really deploy his worker cluster quickly, right? So there are another 6 steps of integrating VCD with underlying infrastructure, which was built in another 6 steps with 40 kg. So very, very quick steps, easy to implement, and hand it off that particular environment or tenant URL to a developer to start building those applications.
And it's important to note in this environment that you only have to do this once, right? If you're looking at a VCD overlay environment, this is only done once.
Very valid point. Absolutely. This is one this activity is done, it's all about consumption, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about single tenant. Let us do a multi-tenancy, right? What multi-tenancy means, right? I have one management domain or component sitting in here, and then I have my tenant 1, tenant 2, tenant 3. How do I make sure that I have one single pane of management control sitting in with my IT admin, and then I'm just creating various clusters or workload domains per customer? That's my typically a multi-tenant or shared cloud architecture. It could be a client 1, client 2, or it could be a big organization having their own internal multi-tenancy. Like, for example, finance will have their own workload domain, right? Sales and marketing will have their own domain or their own resources and the applications, and so on and so forth, right? So for the larger environment, for the large customers, this application or this particular architecture is also applicable, but gives the confidence of total delineation of my access to the data, access to the environment separate from each other. That's a power of my VMware Cloud Director on top of VMware Cloud Foundation and vxRail. So let us do a double click on this multi-tenancy. How are we achieving it, right? At the bottom, if you see that various components from a provider perspective, provider is nothing but consider it as a cloud admin, controlling the infrastructure resources, creating various pools for tenants to consume, right? So definitely apart from having vCenter, vSphere, or NSXT, or load balancer, or even SDDC manager type of tools that they have, they will also have Cloud Director API access and a CSC extension. And we'll talk about CSC, what does it really means. It allows me to really differentiate and deliver tenant level architecture for my Kubernetes workloads for tenant A and tenant B. Tenant A TKG clusters are not aware what tenant B is running. That way I can say that my org VDC, which is my organizational virtual data center for tenant A and tenant B or N, are totally isolated from each other, right? That's the power of tenancy or multi-tenancy that we are able to deliver. And CSC will manage the overall Kubernetes workflows at a core through the VCD to ensure that the policies, the catalogs defined by the provider are available to a specific set of tenants, not to everyone.
Yeah, so CSC, Container Service Extension, is a free element for VCD. It's a plugin. And that will essentially provide the interface from VCD into the Tanzu Kubernetes clusters and do all of the masking of the API calls and do all of the communication with Tanzu.
Exactly. Well said. So let us do another, understanding of how are we enabling TKGM via VMware Container Service Extension, right? I mean, it is all about delivering various services to a DevOps engineer, right? So this will get them a TKGM cluster, so TKGM worker cluster, right? So we want to make sure that Cloud Director is deployed, VCD endpoints are done, and then a cloud admin or provider admin will deploy a small Ubuntu virtual machine where a CSC will be installed and configured, right? This gives an ability to really provide various type of TKG OVS to the VCD, and those once published are available to a developer. So CSC install as of today has some manual steps that I have to go through, about 12 steps, well documented. It really works well. But the overall feedback that we received from a lot of our providers to really see how we can automate it further as well. So we have taken a serious efforts when we are releasing CSC 4.x, which is in beta at the moment, is shipped as a small Ubuntu OVA. And all the steps that I talked about under CSC install box are essentially automated. So we want to make sure that a provider can download that OVA with few kind of environment specific information like IP address, gateway, NTP, DNS, and things like that, provided to that particular OVA, and then essentially you are ready to consume CSC enabled environment for your various customers as quickly as possible. Okay, so let's go to the next. This brings my overall high-level architecture from single tenant and multi-tenant and CSC. I'm going to go switch myself into a demo, which is recorded, to make sure that you can see it, the things are in action. It is not just only in PowerPoint, but we do have it in actual environment. So let me switch myself quickly. So I'm logging into a vSphere to Virtual Center server as my administrator access. I just want to show here that, from the inventory perspective, that I have 4 hosts here in the inventory. And then if you look at it, I have deployed various components that I want to point to. After the 4 hosts, I can show you that I have various namespaces created. This is where typical single tenant aspects of Tanzu comes into the picture, right? The first slide I was talking about Tanzu enabled in a single tenant mode. This is what it is all about, enabled at the vSphere level using automation delivered by Cloud Foundation and then integration with VCD. And showcasing you, how it literally looks from a cloud admin perspective as well. So that's my single tenant architecture. Now moving into to the next, which are basically key components of my architecture all about having my edge clusters deployed. That's again automated by VMware Cloud Foundation, very easy to deploy, you don't need to worry about it. And then if you look at it, various virtual machine that I'm pointing here is VCF, is basically my SDDC manager. Then you can see my NSXT 123, this is my NSXT management cluster, and so on and so forth. Objects are deployed. So it's all showcasing it to you to ensure that it is deployed with pretty much of 80 to 89, 85% of overall automation. Now let's log into a cloud director to really understand how it looks from a cloud director perspective. So I'm logging in as a cloud provider. So whatever is shown in the previous section is basically available to me as a provider. So I'm a cloud provider. I have access to all the resources underlying once I have vCenter server attached to it as my endpoint. And then I can define various aspects of my tenant organizations and tenant using my cloud director. So if I'm logging in to it as a tenant A, so this is what a developer or DevOps engineer will have a look. At this particular juncture, if you see that access given to a developer is showing that they have various tenants defined, various organizations defined for that tenant, and the overall resources available in terms of CPU, memory, and storage. A DevOps engineer doesn't know whether it is running on which hardware and what it is running on, right? Because he doesn't need to care about it. He is interested in building those applications. So this is overall feel and look out of the box as a tenant portal that developer will have a look. Again, lot of providers have a way to mask this using Cloud Director APIs as per their own portal that they may have. So this is out of the box. It can be changed. And then this is what I was talking about, right? A developer is basically drop down from a menu to deliver Kubernetes container clusters. Sorry, the color is probably not that great combination, but I hope you can see it where my thumb looks like stop. It is allowing me as a developer to deliver and deploy Kubernetes clusters. Let us go and see if I can deploy a Kubernetes cluster, right? So I already have few clusters deployed here successfully, right? I wanted to show how easy and quick it is to deploy a cluster. Let us go and click new. But before we do that, I just want to show that, hey, this was just deployed. This is not like pre-cooked when the demo was recorded, right? So I'm going to go and say create a new cluster very quickly. So from this view, what you see that what is my Kubernetes provider, what version I'm using, and whether I have an ability to upgrade this particular cluster, right? So that's a power. That's the thing that I was talking about. A developer cannot only deploy the clusters, but also is able to perform lifecycle automation onto the Kubernetes cluster with few clicks of a button. Very simple, very easy. So let us go and see if I am able to deploy a Kubernetes cluster. So I think I have to click on new very quickly, and then essentially go through the phase here, right? So if you look at this, I have a native and I have a VMware Tanzu Kubernetes Grid 2 options. What is the difference? If you remember that I was talking about a single tenant and multi-tenant. So when I do a native to vSphere, that's what it is all about. So when I'm deploying this as a native, it is using that single tenant aspects of my architecture and deploying it for that particular developer Kubernetes cluster. Let's go and see how quickly it is to really deploy. So I'm going to go give a name for my worker cluster as a native. I'm going to use a specific template, use my virtual data center. If I have multiple data centers, then it will show me if I have multiple data centers as an endpoint that I can pick and choose. Like for example, I may have an environment running in New York. So that's the vCenter of New York. I may have an environment running in San Francisco. So I have another virtual center server. So a developer has that flexibility depending on what policies are exposed to him, what computer systems are exposed to him or her, can deploy these clusters anywhere as long as they have access to it. While defining it, you can define a control plane and worker nodes, depending on your workload and depending on the size of the cluster that you want to define. We can choose various policies. Some of them, they are defined out of the box. If you want to customize it, you can define the customization also in terms of CPU and memory for my master node or to my worker nodes as well. And then we can go to the next screen talking about, again, kind of showcasing it to you the way that you can customize it, but I'm going to go choose out of the box default settings. If I want to add any NFS node to the cluster, this is another power. A lot of places that the customers or partners are storing images and ISOs and OVS to an NFS data store, which is a cheap cost option. So if you want to add that node to a cluster, you can do so very easily. And then that becomes available to all other tenants, depending on how you configure it. I'm not going to go choose any specific of an NFS node at the moment because I don't have it set it up, but that's a use case for you to remember. And then the network. This is a very crucial part of understanding what that means. So each organization has its own network assigned to it, and that's how they can communicate north and southbound very easily. So depending on that, you pick and choose a specific segment for your northbound connectivity for your application. And what happens internally, it's all, typically east-west traffic. You don't need to worry about it. It's all inside that particular bubble, and it's all safe and secured by NSXT features. So just reviewing all the input and selection that I have made, and then clicking on finish. Once you finish, it will take a few minutes to really start deploying that particular cluster. Now, if you look at this, this is like native and unknown. After it is finished, I'll show you what it means. But look at the Kubernetes providers. Now it is showing native. So because I chose that first option of single tenant architecture, right? Let us say and deploy a second cluster using multi-tenancy. That's where I can show you that I have only one Kubernetes template that I was able to upload and share with this particular architecture. So I have no choice, but I'm going to go choose that one and then go through the similar kind of, options. Here, I have a way to really define being a multi-tenant under that particular virtual data center. If you see that, I have created two organizations. One is a Flex and one is a org VDC. So here, I can pick and choose which org within that tenant I would like to create this particular cluster. A little bit more granular approach in terms of it, because I want to make sure that whatever I'm deploying for my org VDC is not shareable or available to my Flex tenant, right? So once I pick that up, go through the similar kind of options that we saw earlier, picking up my storage segments here. It gives me an ability that do I need to contain this particular application as an internal applications, kind of cutting off all my northbound public facing connectivity, and I can do that very easily. So it becomes an internal app. I'm sure if it goes to an audit, it will definitely pass very quickly that, hey, you know what, when I deployed this, it was deployed only on an internal network. It is not exposing to outside or external traffic at all. So it gives you more flexibility in terms of how you control which application has an internet or outbound connectivity or external connectivity and which application you don't. So for now, we'll just select an internal application and take the next steps. Here, as I said, my internal traffic is pretty much conserved, but still I need to specify some sort of CIDR and service CIDR. Normally, we don't tend tend to change this, just pick it up default, because it's all inside that particular network bubble. It is not exposed to outside at all. After reviewing all the input selections, I'm just going to go click finish. It's going to take some time to really deploy. So here, if you look at it now, that native is still going on, and it will say that it's native. And have a look, the one that I just created as a multi-tenant, it's going to show me that I'm using provider as a TKG as my provider, right? And the version, because I had only one version, but typically I may have multiple versions if I have uploaded it, right? And I think in a few minutes, we'll come back and see that this is all finished successfully.
So Girish, and just quickly, so the native one then is actually just native Kubernetes, right? It's completely vanilla Kubernetes that anyone could deploy.
Exactly.
Whereas the Tanzu version is where VMware has done all of the pre-bundling of the additional Tanzu install libraries that you might want, the Tanzu images, the networking, the repository and things like that. So you're getting a lot more value add with the Tanzu kind of Kubernetes cluster, because you're going to get a lot more out of the box, and you're going to get a lot more security as well as application convenience. Whereas what we're saying is CSE can, if your customers want you can deploy a pure native Kubernetes cluster, and you can do that across any tenant as well.
Exactly. Thanks for recapping, my demo. Gives more clarity. So let us look at, logging in as a tenant A, as one of the user. Let us see. If you look at here, I have logged in as a DevOps 1 user, right? So really, I'm logging in as one of the developer with the right level of access. And then trying to run some Kubernetes cluster and creating it. But before that, having deployed my Kubernetes cluster is good. But this is the next step that we are delivering as App Launchpad. So I want to give you some teaser about how it really looks from a developer perspective. So these are the templates which are verified, validated by VMware. Some of them, they are OVA coming in from VMware. Some of them, they are Bitnami images coming in. But what we have done, we have integrated this also with VMware Cloud Director, giving another level of flexibility for my developer to really deploy maybe a MariaDB, or maybe any sort of load balancer, or Grafana as a virtual appliances, or NSX advanced load balancer, or even Grafana Helm chart package together. So we don't want your developers to spend time on configuring and defining various aspects of key required components for given applications. So they are coming in through App Launchpad integrated with Cloud Director for them to really consume various catalog items at their fingertips. So how easy it is, right? So let us go and pick and choose a Grafana as a virtual appliance, or launch it. So what I'm doing, essentially, I'm just specifying a name for that particular template, which is packaged by Bitnami specific version. And I'm just going to say, hey, launch that app for me. In a few minutes, if I go back to my applications, I can see that my Grafana is being built and will be available pretty quickly. So it's as simple as that to ensure that a developer can deploy this type of applications for monitoring or whatnot, right? Very, very quickly using pre-built images. Maybe it's a OVA, maybe it's a container image coming in through Cloud App Launchpad easily for them to consume. Let's go to the next one. So I'm kind of coming back to where I was. Since these clusters were being created, I just wanted to take my time to show you an app launchpad. There is a separate demo in detail by my peer. So actually delivered to you. I will look at that as well. But let us come and see how my app cluster looks like. So native was successfully created with a specific version of TKG 20.6, right? And if you look at my multi-tenant A created successfully with version 21.2, very in few minutes, right? So it's all about showcasing the power of it, how quickly and how easily that can be done. Now, how do I access it as a developer? So developer will get an IP address and then definitely download the kubecon file, go through some kind of settings as a developer will do, and then access that cluster and start building the applications using that particular workload cluster easily. And same thing for my multi-tenant app, same, you'll have to download different kubecon file. Typically, a developer will do that maybe on a Linux VM, junk VM, or a Mac by itself, or even Windows as well, and then start using it. Now, I was showing it to you about App Launchpad. Me as a provider, right, as an administrator, I want to check and see how my App Launchpad service is being consumed, by whom it is consumed, and things like that. So it gives me this kind of, various ways of dashboard and monitoring it and looking at it to see how my developers are consuming my various aspects of services that I'm delivering it to them. I think that's kind of concludes the overall demo of VMware Cloud Foundation with VMware Cloud Director, powered by Tanzu as a developer with App Launchpad and delivering various Kubernetes clusters.
Great to see. So you've got the option to deploy pure native Kubernetes there. You've got the option to use Tanzu Kubernetes clusters, Tanzu's VMware version of Kubernetes with the additional value that we bring. App Launchpad syncs with the VMware Cloud Marketplace. You need an MSP contract for that, but essentially everything you can pull down from there, you can use and pre-create your list of applications that you want to offer to partners. And then all of this then automatically just getting redeployed into the underlying vxRail infrastructure, which is kind of scaling in and out as you require it, and very simply doing that with the Cloud Director multi-tenancy and resource pooling. A fantastic solution. It's got a lot of granularity to it. It's got a, I think from my perspective, certainly the key value is the ease of deploying VxRails, deploying VCF, having that stood up really quickly, and then having this additional value that you can deploy on top using Cloud Provider Lifecycle Manager. And as we saw in a demo, right, it doesn't take long to start configuring clusters and starting to offer your customers your new services.
Exactly. I think just want to add to that, right? For me as a developer, life doesn't stop here, right? I want to make sure that if I have multiple clusters running across what Lucas depicted in his first slide about having a control of my own cluster on-prem, but also can I have cluster running in GCV or any other public provider Kubernetes version. So stay tuned. I'm working with Lucas on that next version of additional features that we are coming out pretty soon, which will really give you a clarity on what that multi-cloud vision looks like that we are talking about when it comes to Kubernetes world for a developer.
Brilliant. Exciting. Well, Lucas, we'll wait with anticipation for the next version. Gentlemen, thank you very much for today. I really appreciate you walking us through the setup and the demo, Girish, and thank you, Lucas, for taking us through the slides and the high-level overview of the architecture. I'll post a link to any of the material we've discussed in the description, but gents, thank you very much for your time today.